the team to beat in the region this year. So that's going to be a big clash coming up Friday night down at Paducah Tillman. Caldwell County with 3 straight home games the last 3 weeks, and I think the Tigers have gotten better each week. But Paducah Tillman may be the best team that the Tigers have faced this season. Should be a great game. Caldwell County's kind of had Paducah Tillman's number the last few years. Tillman, a big Class 3A school and a little bit bigger historically than Caldwell County, but the Tigers have beaten the Blue Tornado each of the last 3 years, and last year's game, just an incredible game out at Tiger Stadium with the Tigers pulling out a 24-21 win on a last-second field goal after a hook and ladder play got them in position to win that football game. So expecting a big turnout of Caldwell County fans down at Paducah Tillman. Tillman's had a big year. They're 4-1. A lot of people are picking Paducah Tillman in this game. I think it's more of a toss-up, but we're going to talk with Ed Marlowe a little bit later on about that. And, of course, he's from the Paducah Sun and follows Tillman and all the teams down that way. Also, when we get Ed on the line, we're going to have a top 5 today from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're going to talk about our top 5 movies, so I know everyone's going to want to stick around for that a little bit later on. As always, it's a busy day in sports. The Caldwell County volleyball team is at home tonight. The Lady Tigers are 12-7 on the season. They'll host Madisonville North Hopkins. I know the Lady Tigers aren't completely pleased with that record. Usually at this time it's just a little better, but they've played just a tough schedule so far this season, and I think playing all those tough games will help them later on. So 12-7 is the record, and the big thing tonight, it's a district game. The Lady Tigers can wrap up the number 1 seed for the 7th district tournament. And because it's a 3-team district in the 7th district, the number 1 seed for the tournament not only advances straight to the championship game, but you're assured of having a spot somewhere in the 2nd region tournament. So that's a big deal tonight for the Lady Tigers. They've already beaten Madisonville once. They own a couple of wins over Hopkins County Central. So, it's going to be a big game out at the Cab Gym, and the Lady Tigers looking forward to that one against Madisonville. Boys soccer is at home, and I'm not sure how this worked out, but the boys soccer team also playing Madisonville North Hopkins tonight in a district tilt. Madisonville, pretty strong year so far in soccer, so the Tiger soccer team might have their hands full, but that's going on at Butler Stadium. Get out and check that out. Girls soccer is on the road tonight. They're at Fort Campbell. So
I hope they have their insurance up to date. So you'll have trouble getting into the game.
but lots going on for local sports, and we're ready to get out and cover some of that, and hopefully a big crowd at both events.
Absolutely. Todd, I don't have a lot of faith in your producer, me, but I'm cautiously optimistic we have Ed.
All right, that's great. Hey, Ed, good morning. How's it going?
It's going all right, Todd. How you doing, man?
Excellent, and coming in loud and clear, so that's great, too. A big football game coming up later on tonight, and, of course, we're going to do a top 5 later on, like I mentioned when we first came on, our favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. So, we're going to make people wait for that for just a little while, though. Call your friends, tell them to turn on the radio and listen, because we'll be passing that along later. But first of all, a big football game Friday night. I'm not sure regular season contests come much bigger, because it looks to me like Caldwell and Tillman is for the district championship.
Yeah, it very well could be. And I talked to Jeff Waters of WCBL earlier today, actually. That interview will come out on Friday. But you talk about, well, first of all, it's just exciting because, to be quite honest, last year Tillman probably, they were really close to having it in the bag last season. And Caldwell did a really good job, holding off, saving a late drive from Tillman, and I believe a missed field goal, if I'm not mistaken, is what kept that from going to overtime. So, great Caldwell team last year, great Tillman team last year. A couple of things, though, about this game that really excite me. And one, Caldwell getting off the schneid, so to speak, to wallop Henderson County. I think everybody was kind of stunned to see that. I know in our Paducah Sun picks, all 12 of us picked Henderson to win that game, and Caldwell just kind of told us not to do that ever again. And then you have Tillman just playing great football right now. There just really is no other way to put it. They're about 30 minutes away from an undefeated season. I think they've had a really tough second half against Mayfield. That was a 28-27 game after the first quarter, and then Mayfield, of course, does what it does best and outscored its opponent 23-0 to win the game. So, that's how close Tillman is to playing perfect football this year. So, just a really exciting matchup between Caldwell and Tillman. Quite frankly, it's going to be exciting. Al Willman, our high school reporter at the Paducah Sun, will be there for that game.
Well, Mayfield has done that to a lot of teams, though, ruin their perfect season. So that's not that big a deal. And I think Tillman played pretty well in that game. I know Coach Steve Duncan had that program on the right track last year, and then some problems with him before the season started. But, man, it doesn't look like they missed a beat.
No, matter of fact, I think the two things, really, it's a couple of things they're doing a lot different than they were last year. Last year, you took a look at that offense and what they were able to do with all of those athletes and stretch the ball and move you sideline to sideline and then punch it up the middle. They're just not turning the ball over as much as they did last year. That was the one thing that really kind of plagued them late in situations, several games where they were right in the mix with either a 1 to 2 score disadvantage. They'd get back into a game and then they'd have a costly turnover. You take a look at the Christian County game last year. They had a lead going into the fourth quarter, and then Christian County's defense, I'm not trying to take anything away from them, it was great defense, but Tillman coughed the football up a couple of times near the red zone that would have secured that game and a big win for Steve Duncan's program. So, last year Tillman was right on the cusp of 2 or 3 pretty big victories. One of them would have been that Caldwell County game, too, and McCracken County right out of the gate. But just turnovers were just a costly thing for them last season. This year, they're not turning the ball over, and they're also running more guys. They're just a lot more physical at the line of scrimmage. And I know the cliche dominating the trenches is kind of a boring thing to say, but they're really doing that, both on the defensive and the offensive side of the ball. A couple of running backs that you'll be paying a lot of attention to tomorrow, Todd, Colby Krim and Mikel Askew. You'll probably see a little bit of Damian Ford, as well as Jaden Freeman, their super track star. Those are the 4 guys that they like to run out of their backfield, and all 4 of them have very unique special capabilities, much like the Avengers that we'll talk about later.
Oh, wow. Yeah, good tie-in. Well, a new quarterback this year, though, and that Harmon kid was special last year, especially running the football. How has the new kid looked?
Well, they were going to be playing Tayshawn Carruthers at quarterback, and it's no disrespect to Tayshawn. He was doing a fine job. He had a little bit of an injury on his throwing arm, so they've been using him out of the backfield and more on the defense. So they've been running Cam Marshall at quarterback. And Cam, the unique thing about Cam, again, they have adopted the Steve Duncan system, which you guys know quite well there in Princeton. And so they don't really throw the ball more than about 7-8 times a game, maybe 10 if they think they can get the numbers in the box. But the one thing that I will say that Cam has going for him is he's got a pretty strong arm. He completed a 37-yard pass against Hopkinsville on 3rd down last week, did a really good job just kind of moving in and out of the pocket. He also has a penchant for carrying the football, and he's really good in goal line situations. So he's got enough speed to get out of the basket, get out of the trouble back there, and move sideline to sideline. So that's what really, it helps Tillman's offense kind of get the ball out of their running back's hands if they want their quarterback to make a play. But again, the one thing that I will say Cam has been able to do since taking over quarterbacking duties for Tillman is he's been able to throw the football. And you need to be able to do that at least a little bit to really break apart a defense and really create some of those running lanes that your running backs need. Cam's been able to do that.
Yeah, I've been able to watch several of their games, and they will take some shots down the field, which I don't think they did as much of last year. But
they didn't.
It's still a run-heavy offense, and Caldwell County saw that last week against Henderson County and played pretty well against it. But I've noticed this year Tillman will spread the field at times and look to get the ball, into the hands of a receiver or at least take a shot down the field.
Yeah, they'll take a shot. And again, I wouldn't necessarily expect them to throw the ball more than 10 times a game. It just doesn't happen. It's the Steve Duncan way, so to speak. I can't even remember the last time a quarterback took 15 passes in a Steve Duncan coached game. And I don't necessarily think that's indicative of anything that he's ever done. He's had plenty of great quarterbacks in his career. It's just one of those things, like that's just the way that they, move their offense. And to be completely fair, it works for Tillman. They have a great offensive line. couple of tight ends that they really can rely on the left and right side. They'll play in a pistol every once in a while if they need to, just to kind of create a little bit more space in the backfield. I think I've seen them take a couple of shotgun snaps just to see if they can create some space in an open lane out of the Wildcat. But for the most part, this is a power run formation. If it's not Mikel Askew blocking for Colby Krim to spring out for a touchdown, or Colby Krim blocking for Mikel Askew to spring out for a touchdown, that's kind of what they're doing. So they've even run a fullback several times in that power formation. So it's just, you just never know what sort of matchup you're going to get. But you're exactly right, Todd. Caldwell playing Henderson County last week and dealing with that run offense that they have out of the Colonels. Maybe this is, this is indicative of what's to come. It'll be a tough matchup. I expect it to be a tough matchup either way, but maybe Caldwell's turned the corner and is ready for the downstretch of their season.
Well, you mentioned last year's game over here, and that was a great football game, and certainly Tillman had some chances to pull that game out. The thing that sticks out to me, though, was the physicality of that game. And the Tigers went into that game beat up a little bit. They were without their leading tackler last year, still able to hang on and pull that game out at the end. And the Tigers did that a lot last year while going 10-3. They've struggled a little bit this season, but I'm expecting the same kind of physicality this week that, it was a physical game last week and a physical game against Tillman last year.
Oh, you hit the nail right on the head. I fully expect. Quietly, I think Mayfield especially has commented on this. This is one of the more physical teams in recent memory of Paducah Tillman has possessed, and that's the one thing that I think a lot of people have been really surprised with, or maybe not even necessarily surprised, but it's just been real eye-opening to see if you put the tape on for Tillman, it's very bruising, right? And obviously they were a physical team last year. That's not what I mean at all. I'm just saying they've really kind of kicked that up a notch, if that's even possible. Last year, in my opinion, they were a good 5-7 team. They were physical, but they made some mental mistakes. They had some tough penalties. They turned the football over a little bit too much in their offense. This year, they have that physicality and that edge, and they don't turn the football over. Again, if Caldwell County can find any way to force the ball out of their hands at the line of scrimmage or on a big play or something like that, that's going to be obviously to their advantage, and they're going to have to score on it, because Tillman does such a great job milking clock. They do such a great job keeping the ball, keeping position, and really eating away your opportunities. But as Coach Barnes would call it, this is a money game, and so anything, all bets are off. It's a district matchup, and I fully expect it to be. Again, that's part of the reason Al Wilman will be at this game. It should be the game of the week across Western Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, and contrasting styles this week, too. You've got Tillman that wants to ground it and run the clock, and then you've got Caldwell County that wants to try to strike quickly, and the Tigers don't care about time of possession. Now, I think they lose that significantly every week, and that's okay with them. So it's going to be interesting to see which side can force their game plan. Yeah,
absolutely. And the one thing that I will have to say, too, I think last week you saw Caldwell do a really good job break its passing game open. I mean, when Oliver Parker can go off for 8 catches, 150 yards, is that right?
Oh,
something
yeah.
Close to
Yeah,
that.
it was a good game.
And touchdown. Yeah, anytime a wide receiver at Caldwell can break out for a game, for 150 plus and a touchdown, that's usually a win. I'd be curious to see how many times Caldwell County has won a football game in the last 5 to 10 years when a wide receiver goes for 150 yards. Chances are pretty high that that they won the football game if they had a receiver do that. So I don't know the ins and outs of that, but if I were to sit down and do the math on that, I would say more often than not, Caldwell won a football game when a guy had $150 and a touchdown. So if Caldwell does that again on Friday night, I look for Tillman to have a lot of trouble, because the one thing that I do think Caldwell has this year is an excellent balance of the run and pass. Obviously, the first couple of games of the season, we didn't see that come to fruition, but you knew it was there, with Derek Hallowell and, and obviously, the Rileys and all those passing options, that Joby Jaggers has. Those are exciting things in this Barnes offense, and it just took a little while to get going.
Well, it looked to me from just watching some of the Paducah-Tillman games from earlier in the season that maybe defensively the Tigers can do a few things. I know Mayfield rolled up some big yardage against Tillman's defense, but that's Mayfield. How improved is the Tillman defense this year, and what do you expect in that area?
I think from a defensive standpoint, the one thing that really sticks out to me is just their front seven. They do such a great job pressuring quarterbacks. They do such a great job really attacking the run game. I will say that they probably are a little susceptible to a big play action pass just because they do really sell out on the run. But they create so much pressure, your quarterback is going to have to make a great decision. And that's what ends up being, a big problem. Damian Ford, Amarian Patterson, Colby Krim, Mitchell Crouch, these are all guys that are just going to create a lot of problems in the running game. They're going to make Joby Jaggers really uncomfortable. They're going to make that offensive line really fidgety. And so it'll be a tough battle at the line of scrimmage. But again, if Jaggers can stay in the pocket and stay comfortable, get set in his position, and fire off a deep pass, but they've got a chance to hit a couple of big plays. But again, Tillman sells out. This is again a very physical team. Mayfield was able to really get control of the line of scrimmage after the first quarter, about midway through the second quarter, and that allowed Jaden Stinson to really kind of open up in the passing game. And Jaden's had such a great year, anyways. He's got the most completions, most attempts without an interception, and that's how Mayfield was able to really start taking control of that game, is recorrecting the line of scrimmage. If Caldwell can do that, then they're going to be able to come away with a big win.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is going to be key for Caldwell this week because I really expect Paducah-Tillman to try to bring a lot of pressure. I expect them to blitz, and it's just going to be how Caldwell County reacts to that. Last week, they caught Henderson County in a blitz with a run play, blew open a big hole on the left side of the line, and went for a touchdown. So, those plays can go either way sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the exciting thing about this game, is it really does come down to, this doesn't look like a lopsided game at all to me. As a matter of fact, I think if you look at the Paducah Sun picks tomorrow, I would imagine it's probably a kind of a pick 'em. This is kind of a 50-50 game in my mind, particularly with Caldwell coming away with a big win against Henderson. This is going to come down to X's and O's. This will come down to who can make the big play at the last second, limiting turnovers. I expect this to be a great football game, just to be honest. It's evenly matched, in my opinion. Both teams playing really well right now. And you're right. You said it at the very beginning. It very likely, disrespect to Truett County in the slightest, but it very likely could come down to being the district championship. But we'll see, how that all shakes out.
Well, you never know. Union County has actually moved up into those Class 3A rankings in the AP poll, too.
Right.
So they'll have to be dealt with, and Caldwell County has them here at Tiger Stadium next week. But I think most observers would say the winner of Tillman and Caldwell really has the inside track to that championship and the number one seed, and maybe takes over the favorites role in the region.
Yeah, it's extremely possible. And not only that, if you lose or you lose close, you probably are still thinking, let's regroup and get the 2 seed and still get a home game in your first round. I mean, either way, it's hard to think a loss would be a detriment to the season, because if you play well in tomorrow's game, you still got a great chance to come away with a 2 seed and still get that first home game in the 3A playoffs. But, you're exactly right. Union County certainly is in that mix. Truett County is playing really good football right now. It's a great district this year, and certainly a really exciting time for 3A football.
Yeah, and if you look over in that other district in the first region, Elizabethtown has had a lot of success here lately. They've stopped Caldwell County 3 straight years. LaRue County was expecting a good year. I don't think either one of those teams have quite lived up to the expectations yet, but I think those are probably the best 2 teams over there.
Yeah, I'd say so, and I think what you end up getting, though, it's crazy to think. We are a month into the season, but there's still a ton of football to be played. That's the other thing, too, is we've developed these storylines, and there's some trends that are starting to really, really starting to develop. But the thing about it is there's still, in the back of my mind, I don't want to say that time is running out, but there's still 6 weeks of regular season football to go. So, before we get to the playoffs. So there's still just a lot that can happen between now and mid-October.
Oh, absolutely. And, both teams have played tough schedules coming into this week's game, Caldwell County at Paducah-Tillman. And both teams have looked good at times. The Tigers had a couple of games they thought they let get away. I think if you ask any of the Tigers, they would say they should be 5-0 right now. And if you start comparing scores, Tillman looks really good. But I know that Graves County game was close for a half. I think it was like 14-7 at halftime. And by the time Tillman got to Hopkinsville was without its starting quarterback. So if you start comparing scores, I'm not sure you get a completely accurate picture of this week's game.
No, you really don't. And the one thing that I will say, I mean, you take a look at Caldwell's 2 losses, it's just tough. I mean, especially that very first week. I had a chance to see Caldwell against Christian County, and they just never could get their offense really in a good rhythm. And you lose a baseball game basically 11-6. Yes. You gave up 1 touchdown and 2 safeties. That's not a box score you'll see very often. So it's just one of those tough situations that Caldwell probably should have come away with a season-opening victory, but just didn't. Lovelace's teams have always been, defensive-minded and done a really good job creating a lot of havoc on the defensive side of the ball and running the football effectively. And that's basically what that game came down to. So I don't think Joby ever really had a chance to get into some sort of rhythm. And that was, that should have been another win on Caldwell County's ledger. But, I mean, that's what happens. You learn from those mistakes and you move forward and you get better as a football team. And I think a step forward was evident last week with a lopsided win over Henderson County, a team that a lot of people thought had a chance to make some noise in 6A.
Yeah, I'm not sure they still don't. I think that Gibson Southern win was a big one for them. And
absolutely.
Henderson came in with a lot of momentum, but Caldwell County just played really well defensively, and Henderson just couldn't quite get anything going on offense. And it's just from week to week, it's all down to matchups, and that's what's interesting when you show up at the football field each Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned, I mean, Henderson's probably going to have a say in the district this year. I mean, McCracken County is going to be tough for sure, just in their district. It could come away with a district championship. You never know. They play Davies County this week at Davies, so that's going to be, kind of an interesting matchup. But we'll, I've said it a million times, that there's still just so much football that needs to be played. But the exciting part is district play is here. Most of your teams have finished off their non-district slate, and they start district play this week. And this is when we start to really find out what type of a football team you are and what your chances are of going deep in the playoffs. Actually, it will be. This is where it begins on Friday night.
Caldwell County at Paducah-Tillman this Friday, and Ed, there's one thing I've got to ask you, because as soon as I mentioned yesterday that you're going to be on the show, this is what everybody kept hitting me with. What about those picks last week in the Paducah Sun? I mean, you mentioned it earlier. Everybody went with Henderson.
Yeah, everybody went on Henderson, and I know why. I mean, you take a look at how Henderson started his season. They went 4-0, and they beat some really good teams. You already mentioned one of those wins is Gibson Southern, and just I think a lot of people. I picked Henderson too. I'm not even gonna deny it. It's right there in the picks. I think everybody took Henderson because of how well they've been playing to start their season, and I'll be quite honest. I think the Caldwell County Tigers would be the first to mention that maybe they underachieved a little bit to start the season. They probably should have come away with a win against Christian County, and probably shouldn't have struggled early against Crittenden County and things like that. But that's a good Crittenden County football team right there. I'm gonna tell you right now. I think Coach Thompson and I think Crittenden County. I'm hoping to get a chance to get over there. I might go to the Russellville game at Russellville, because that might be for a district championship. But you take a look at Caldwell starts the season, and I think you'd be the first to say that it's maybe been a little bit underwhelming. With everybody coming back from last season. Obviously, you had some big holes to fill in the defensive side of the ball. There's no question about that, especially at linebacker, replacing all of that talent and all of those tackles and Hunter and Dylan and Bashir and whatnot. It's just tough to do. Asking any team to do that would be really, really difficult. But I think Henderson being such a strong 6A school and with such a strong 4-0 start, I think is what, helped corroborate all of us going with Henderson. When I get those picks, the way that they work, everybody emails them to me privately. So we don't even necessarily, like, as a matter of fact, I try to make my picks 99% of the time. I make my picks. I don't even look at anybody else emailing me because I don't need it to jade or, mess with my mind how, I take it pretty seriously. So, when I made my picks, I was just like, well, I think Henderson's played some really good football. Take a look at their schedule. They're running the football really well. They're not turning the ball over. Caldwell hasn't quite gotten the midseason form yet. I'll go with Henderson. Well, then I started typing all the picks out, and everybody went with Henderson. And I was just like, well, that's kind of odd. I was like, that's not really, but I guess everybody tried to read the tea leaves the same way that I did, and we were all wrong. So, that happens. Every once in a while, there's a pick that everybody makes that, you snag one, you pick an upset. I took Russellville over Trigg, and, those were I actually went 8-2 last week, so I didn't do as bad as I thought I was going to do. But, I took Russellville over Trigg, my alma mater, and Trigg absolutely annihilated Russellville. So, sometimes you get the picks wrong, and that's part of it. I'll be completely honest and go on the record and say I don't necessarily like making picks at all. Because I'm not really a big fan of betting against kids. It's not really my thing. I don't really like, I really like just watching what will happen. And I like talking about storylines and matchups, and as was proven last week, anything can happen in a high school football game. So there's all sorts of reasons why teams win or don't win. And I prefer to just cover and see what happens. But I'm not really a big fan of prognosticating high school football games, but it's part of the job. I was asked to do it when I first came on at the Paducah Sun, and my very first year I was in last place, and now here in going into my fourth year at the Paducah Sun, I'm tied for second. So maybe I've learned a thing or two, but it's not really my thing. But I'm glad everybody gets excited about it because it really brings a hype element to high school football.
Well, we do the same thing in the Times Leader where we make some picks, and I always try to caution everybody that it's for fun. But not everybody gets that, and as soon as you pick against somebody, you get that we're against them, and you're really not. It's just, whatever your opinion was that week. But I got to tell you, man, everybody from Caldwell County saw all those Hendersons on those lines, and you know the way Caldwell County fans are about their football.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Cadiz. I will not. I'll be the first person to admit when I was in college, I turned the radio on, or when I was in college and then I went back to college, the second time around, I had my truck radio on when Elijah Sindelar was marching through the state playoffs. I mean, close to Thanksgiving, and I've paid attention to Crick County football, and I've paid attention to, since I've been at the Sun, I've paid attention to a lot of West Kentucky football, but I mean, I think the message was clear, with all 12, broadcasters and media analysts choosing Henderson over Caldwell. I think the message was clear that all of us believed that Caldwell was maybe experiencing a little bit of a lull. And, again, to come away with a win against Henderson it was huge. I mean, there were people on social media talking about not necessarily even the win, but the lopsidedness of the score. I mean, it was 34-7 late in that ball game, before I think Henderson came away with a garbage touchdown.
Yeah.
And so, you're talking about it wasn't just necessarily a close victory. It was an emphatic victory, which is all the more reason. Again, I've never been a huge fan of picking games and things like that, but you just had to go with who was playing better football coming into the game. And honestly, that was Henderson. Just to be quite fair, that was a Henderson football team that was 4-0, had beat Gibson Southern, had come away with a couple of big key wins early in their year, and Caldwell, was playing mediocre football. Hopefully, for Coach Barnes and his staff, this is a team and this is a program that's gotten back on the right track, and we'll certainly see what happens on Friday night against Tillman. But I do expect it to be one of the better football games of any class across the state tomorrow night.
Oh, yeah, it should be a good one. And we know you're a local guy. Your Aunt Janice Miller is listening to us this morning, so, you got to be on your best behavior.
I do. I better behave. If she and Bridgie are listening, I'm totally sorry.
Well, again, a big game coming up. I think we need to get to a break here, and it's Caldwell County at Tillman. Ed, if you'll hang on, we'll get to our MCU movies in just a minute, and we're going to make everybody wait on that. So stick with us, and we'll be right back on the Sideline Report.
Whether it's a new addition to your home, a family vacation, or just keeping up with the bills, let ABC Finance and its friendly staff help you with your needs. ABC Finance can help you get through the tough times and the good times. Whatever life throws your way, ABC Finance can help. So stop by and see Jody, Sarah, or Virginia today at ABC Finance, located on 62 West, the Princeton Plaza in Princeton. Phone 270-365-7444.
Get spruced up with quality mulch from Bashir Sawmill on Dawson Road in Princeton. We all know that buying mulch by the truckload saves money, and it's only $25 per load for dark natural mulch at Bashir Sawmill on Dawson Road, 1/2 mile past City County Park. Bashir Sawmill also buys standing timber and timberland. Give them a call today, 270-365-2330. That's Bashir Sawmill, family owned and operated in Princeton for over 50 years. U-Ride in Princeton is proud to sponsor the Sideline Report each Thursday on your hometown radio station, WPKY The Tiger. Go on out to U-Ride on Marion Road, ask for Dave's Deal of the Week. It's usually the Spotlight Vehicle of the Week, and it's waiting for you at U-Ride. Dave Harden is the sales manager at U-Ride. Go on out and ask to test drive Dave's Deal of the Week. It's at U-Ride on Marion Road in Princeton. Give them a call at 270-365-3018. U-Ride of Princeton. We are back on the Sideline Report. This is Todd Griffin of the Princeton Times-Leader, and Ed Marlowe of the Paducah Sun is joining us this morning. And Ed, before we get to our movies, I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball here and just ask if you've seen this news. KISS has announced that they're finally having their last tour. It's coming up, and I know that's probably big news.
I saw that last night. I say that I will say that I'm not a member of KISS Nation, so to speak, but I will say that I do like, several songs by KISS. It is crazy to think that they're still rocking out. What has it been, 50 years now?
Since the early 70s, yeah.
Album debut? What did it?
Like 71, 72?
That's what I was fixing to say. It had to be 71 or 72. So the fact that, 48, almost 48 years later, 50 years later, they're still rocking it out, good and strong. I got to give kudos to that. I mean, that's unbelievable that they're able to kind of turn back the clock and do this tour. I can tell you there are plenty of Western Kentucky KISS fans, and I can tell you that they will be on tour with them no matter how much the tickets cost. So, yeah, I mean that's amazing. First of all, that they can even put together this tour in the first place. But hey, look, I mean, you got plenty of guys turning back the clock. You got Paul McCartney, you've got Mick Jagger. I mean, all of these guys are going out on tour right now and have been on tour within the last 3 to 5 years. So, I mean, it's kind of the trend now. I fully expect by the time I'm in my mid-50s and early 60s that the rock bands and the pop bands that I listen to will be turning back the clock with finale tours as well in their mid-60s and early 70s. So, I don't know. I think it's exciting. I know that the tour will sell out. That's for sure. There's no question about that. And, it's kind of a great last hurrah for those guys. And an exciting time for rock and roll.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'll be there somewhere to catch that one, but and I'm hoping they bring some of the old guys back. But yeah, well, the strange thing is, I remember seeing the KISS farewell tour in 2000. It's now 2018. So
hey, listen, they're back for farewell part 2.
Yeah,
2.0.
So I was part of that farewell some time ago, but these farewell tours, they go 2 or 3 years, so they may hit the 50 anniversary during their farewell tour.
Oh, yeah, and that would be amazing. Can you imagine? Well, I mean, you might be at one. I mean, if they're going to be in Nashville or Louisville or Lexington, yeah, it'd be amazing.
Okay, so let's get to our movies. We made everybody wait long enough, and we know that as soon as I announced this yesterday, people started sending me their lists, so I've got at least one of those, and I'm going to read out to everybody. But I guess I'll start with the top 5 first, and first of all, I've got to give an honorable mention to Ant-Man. I couldn't get it in my top 5, but, man, I love that movie. So number 5, I'm going to go with Thor Ragnarok, which I thought was hilarious.
Thor Ragnarok is 5? That is low.
Well, I've got some other movies that I really, really like. What do you got number 5?
My number 5 is honestly, Honestly, I think my number 5 is probably going to be Winter Soldier.
Wow.
I love Winter Soldier. Eric Walker's right. Winter Soldier has a great cloak and dagger feel to it. You learn a lot about Bucky. It really sets a lot more of the Civil War in motion and what we learn about Captain America, Tony Stark, and what's really going on behind the scenes. We, I believe, we get introduced to a couple other characters as well. Winter Soldier is extremely exciting to me from start to finish. And we start to really see the loyalty of Captain America, of Steve Rogers, and what it really means for him to stick by his friends versus sticking by his country. So, yeah, I've got to go with Winter Soldier on that one.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, too. And, trying to get it down to 5 because I like all of them. I mean, it's really tough.
Yeah.
My number 4
absolutely.
is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy. And I like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 about as much as I like the first one. I mean, I just thought they were great.
I love Guardians of the Galaxy, but I've got it a little bit higher. I think honestly, and where it really all started for me, the original Iron Man has got to be number 4.
Okay.
It's the original Iron Man is in my top 5 just because that's where, if you think back, that's been, not to age us here, Todd, but that was like 15 years ago, when that came out. Like it's been since the early to mid 2000s when Iron Man came out. And so, that's when we first got our taste of, oh, this is what a comic book movie could be, and especially the way that movie ends, just the way that he breaks out and says, I'm Iron Man. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And then, that's when we get our first cut scene and we get our first, like, oh, this is going to be kind of an ongoing thing. And then 16 years later, we're 20 movies in. So it's, for me, it's Iron Man for sure.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. As a matter of fact, I've got Iron Man at number 3. And I just think it's a great movie. If you don't care anything about the comics or anything, I think that's just a great movie.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can watch it alone and not watch any of the rest of the series.
Exactly.
And and you can understand, oh, okay, all right, well, we have a superhero team that's in the form. Cool. And you're right, you could never pick up another Marvel superhero movie again, and you would be just fine.
All right, so that's my number 3. What have you got at number 3?
I've had to move Avengers Infinity War out of my top 5.
Oh, see, that was a tough call for me, too.
Infinity War is good, but I just don't think it's necessarily strong as some of its standalone films. Honestly, I think for me, Thor Ragnarok is 3. Thor Ragnarok, in my mind, is one of my easily, I think, top 3 MCU movies. I love the way that it came together. It kind of feels like an outside adventure, but then it brings Thanos back into the picture. It brings Hulk back into the picture. It brings everybody back together, and that's what does, you get Loki back in the mix. It does such a great job just reconnecting everybody that's kind of out, all the Asgardians, that are all kind of doing their own thing, trying to take care of the Bifrost and, and take care of Helya and all that stuff. Like, it does such a great job reconnecting those guys back into the MCU. It's like, well, how are we going to deal with Thanos? Oh, here's why. The spoiler, if you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, that cut scene, that Thanos' ship right there at the end, you're just like, oh man, here comes Infinity War. That's why I think Thor Ragnarok just does a really good job bringing all of us back in an about-face type of way.
Oh, yeah, and it's maybe the funniest of the movies, and Jeff Goldblum is always great, and I think he's like Brad Pitt. The crazier the role, the better I like him in the movie.
Well, they improv, like, I don't know if there's a percentage out there, but they several interviews after Thor Ragnarok came out. I mean, Ruffalo and Hemsworth and and even Hiddleston, they've all talked about how much they improv a lot of that dialogue. And it just felt more organic to me. Now, there's 2 reasons why they were able to improv. One, they've spent a considerable amount of time being these characters over the last 10 years. But 2, they just naturally work well together as actors. And I think you can just tell that in Thor Ragnarok. They just do such a great job interacting with each other.
Okay, we're up to number 2, so it's getting down to it. This could have been number 1 easily. I've got it number 2. It's Black Panther. And I'll be honest, when I went to the movies, I had no idea what to expect, and I was absolutely blown away by that movie. I mean, it could easily have been my number one.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I think we're going to tie on this one. I am a gigantic Black Panther fan. I know everybody kind of gets silly with Wakanda Forever, but the exciting thing about Black Panther is it's another one of those movies that just feels naturally, it just naturally fits in the universe. You know, you wonder where all of these characters are going to fit into the giant saga that is the Avengers versus Thanos, and Black Panther just is able to carve out a great niche part of the story. I mean, that vibranium is extremely important. You know, his powers aren't otherworldly. I think it makes him a little bit more humanistic. If you think about it, like Black Panther is certainly not, I mean, not unbeatable. He's quite mortal, as a matter of fact, as we learn in Infinity War. But, you know, you take a look at a situation, you know, and the way that Black Panther presents its story, I don't know. It's just a really interesting story from start to finish about how the Black Panther came to be, and we get a real taste of Black Panther prior to that in the Civil War series, you know, with Winter Soldier and whatnot. So and Civil War. So it's just I don't know. It's really good. It's really exciting, and easily, you're right, could be number one in the MCU universe.
And I think that's another movie that, even if you haven't seen the other movies, you could go watch and enjoy because, like I said, I had no idea what was going to go on. I just knew that it was the next movie in the series and that I wanted to be there and watch it. But, wow, it just you watch it and you're just blown away by it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic.
So you've got Black Panther at number 2 as well then?
Yes,
okay.
I do.
So that's moving us up to number 1. And my number 1 is going to be Captain America Civil War. I thought they did a great job building up to this movie. It's everything that the Batman versus Superman movie wasn't, and Civil War is my number 1.
Civil War is outstanding, and I really do like it. I really do. But I'm going to go with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Volume 2?
I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, like for me, Civil War is really good. I'm not trying to take anything away from it, and I really do like it. It belongs in the top 5, but for me, I really like Rocket. For some reason, there's just something about him and his kind of nonchalant. He doesn't really give a crap about the rest of the universe, but he actually does care, you know. And I really, as far as story is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and say that you're right. I think Civil War belongs in the top 5. But as far as me personally, what I like out of the universe, I'm a huge, huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and what they've been able to bring to the entire team. And so I'm sure you can hear my cat meowing in the background. Would you be cool, Matt? Thank you.
Also a Guardians of the Galaxy fan?
Yeah, he's a huge Guardians of the Galaxy fan. But I love Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I think it's better than 1. But they're both outstanding. But you know, I'm willing to yield to you. I mean, I will have to say that Civil War is riveting stuff, and certainly does a really good job drawing that line in the sand between, you know, what the Avengers stand for and what they actually are supposed to be doing for the universe and for all of humankind. So it's you know, but that's why the MCU is so good. There's so many different movies you can choose from.
Well, there aren't really any bad ones. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2 has Kurt Russell in it. You may remember him from the episode of Gilligan's Island.
Oh, I don't know if I remember him from the episode of Gilligan's Island. But
yeah, he was a little kid. That's how long he's been doing TV and movies.
I just remember him from Overboard. You know, because you know that's a great movie with Goldie Hawn.
Well, and he's Snake Plissken.
Well, I mean, and you also, I mean, I remember him. I mean, Escape from L.A. We all know that. You know, Big Trouble in Little China. You know, these are classic Kurt Russell films. So I also my first introduction to Kurt Russell though was Backdraft, and man, that movie is outstanding. I don't care what anybody says. It's not the best movie, I guess, when it comes to like catastrophes, but I grew up watching Backdraft. You know, and being creeped out by, you know, pyromaniac Donald Sutherland to talk about, like, how fire works and how it, like, creeps in and out of buildings. And in doorways and stuff, and I was just like, okay, wow, all right. I think I was like 6 or 7 at the time, and that was my first introduction to Kurt Russell, was a badass firefighter. And so, that was jaded by the whole thing of firefighting. So yeah, he's a great actor for sure, and part of the reason why I like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 so much.
Well, getting back to the top 5 real quick, Josh Moore from the Lexington Herald-Leader sent me a top 5, so I'm going to run through that real quick. His
Sure,
number 5 was Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Homecoming's good.
Yeah, I like it. I'm maybe not as big a Spider-Man fan as some people are, but I really like Tom Holland in that role. I think he's probably as close to the actual comic book Spider-Man as anybody, I think.
He is a good Peter Parker for sure.
Number 4, Iron Man. Number 3, Black Panther.
Okay.
Number 2, Thor Ragnarok. And number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy. So, I mean, you guys are right there.
Well, and see, that's the thing, too. I mean, it really just depends on, I think a lot of people, everybody is going to have a different top 5 because everybody is going to have a different feeling as to what they love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about superheroes and villains, too, is that a lot of times you're going to have favorite stories based on kind of what their background was, how they became a superhero or how they became a villain. That's how these stories form, and it's how you form different fan bases to all come together. It's just really exciting because the Avengers is all of them as one unit. So it brings all the fan bases together of whoever you like. If you're a big Spider-Man fan or an Ant-Man fan or a Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, whichever storyline that you really have an affinity for, that's kind of your take on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, there's a lot of people that are big Tony Stark fans, and that's why Civil War, in my opinion, Todd, is so good, is because you end up choosing a side, even though you don't want to.
Right.
You're like, are you Team Cap or are you Team Stark? And I'm going to be honest, I'm Team Cap. So, I mean, that's just the way that worked out.
And they did such a great job of setting that up, though. It wasn't like rushed. I mean, it took years and years and movies, and they just kind of slowly got them on opposite sides before you even realized that they were on opposite sides.
Well, yeah, because it was one fundamental difference in the way that they believed. It just comes down to Tony believes in the Accords. Tony believes in registering, and having a proper system, and and Steve doesn't. Steve Rogers believes that, defenders of the galaxy, defenders of humanity, don't have to, reveal their identities and abide by some code, that they are patriots in their own way. And so, it's an extremely exciting experience to realize that that's the thread that breaks the Avengers. And that's the way it is in the comic books. Obviously, the way the thread is broken is much different in the comic books, but I do think that the movies do a really good job at least trying to create that same sort of friction that exists really in all teams, if you think about it, if we want to relay it back to sports. So it's all part of it. You just have to be able to find a common goal to succeed toward.
Well, the top 5 lists are always fun, and, there's no right or wrong answer. I think all those movies are good. I don't think you could pick any of those movies in your top 5 and been too wrong about it.
I don't know. I will say, I'll tell you two movies that, in my opinion, one that gets overhyped a little too much and one that gets underhyped a little too much. I think what got overhyped a little bit was Ant-Man and Wasp. I thought Ant-Man and Wasp was good, but I just didn't think it was as strong as the rest of the MCU has been from day one. I felt like it was a little bit rushed. Now, I will say I thought they did a really good job in the last 10 to 15 minutes really tying up some loose ends and sending you on course for what was fixing to happen next. I think a movie that doesn't get enough attention is the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk. We still go back to William Hurt's character, consistently, and the Hulk project. Now, I understand that Edward Norton has been recast as Mark Ruffalo, but Norton's Hulk and that movie, that's our first introduction to Captain America. There's the Easter egg at the very end of that film where Hulk goes to hide and Cap's shield is in the ice there, and Hulk is looking for him. And so, I feel like that movie doesn't necessarily get enough attention as part of the MCU movie series, because there were some contractual obligations that weren't met. And so when they recast, Bruce Banner as Ruffalo, I feel like that kind of maybe created a little bit of a disjointed timeline there, but it's the same story. It's the same, it's the same sort of excitement, that was created in some of those early movies to let people know, hey, listen, we're going the full way with this. So I'm a big fan of the Edward Norton, Bruce Banner, Incredible Hulk film. It does a really good job setting the table for how some of these other heroes are going to come into play.
And if you're listening to us and have no idea what we're talking about, get out and watch the movies. There's about 20 of them. Like I said, I think you'll like all of them if you're a fan at all of any of the comic books or any of these characters. Get out and watch them. And like I said, the top 5 is always a fun thing to do. And Ed, we appreciate you coming on the show this morning and giving us a whole lot of your time. And look forward to a big football game Friday night down at Paducah Tillman, Caldwell County, and the Blue Tornado. Any final thoughts on the football game coming up?
Well, the one thing I will say, I just think it's going to come down to the line of scrimmage, honestly. I mean, it's going to come down to who can really protect the football, who's going to be able to protect their quarterback, and if Caldwell can limit the run. If they can take the same type of blueprint that they had against Henderson and expand upon that, I can tell you right now, Tillman's going to throw an incredible amount of offensive looks on the running side of the ball. They're a lot more creative than people give them credit for. They do a really good job getting their athletes out in space, and they do a really good job just in their zone blocking scheme. They do a really good job, and they're just really, really, really physical. I know that's such a cliche way to put it, but they're imposing at the line of scrimmage, and that makes it really, really tough. When Mayfield can come out of that football game and say that that's one of the more physical games they've played in a while, I think that needs to put the rest of the region on notice. If I were to choose right now, going into Friday night's games, I think Tillman is the second best team. Tillman is the second best team in the first region, in the first district, just because of the way that they play, both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. But again, Caldwell can make some real noise if they come away with a big win.
All right, Ed, thanks for joining us, and we'll be seeing you down the road. And tell Al we'll see him at the football game Friday night.
Absolutely, we'll do it.
All right, thanks. That is Ed Marlowe of the Paducah Sun, and we appreciate all the time he gave us this morning and joining us for our top 5, and hopefully you enjoyed that as well. Caldwell County at Paducah Tillman, it's a big football game. Like I wrote in the paper, I don't think regular season games get any bigger than this one, and if you're a Tiger fan, you'll want to get down there. And typically Caldwell County takes pretty good crowds on the road, Bill, and I think we'll see another big turnout Friday night.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot riding on this game with Tillman. I'd have to agree with your assessment based on all the teams in the district. And, boy, what a way to open district play. I don't know who made the schedule, but I think Caldwell County, if they win on the road against the Blue Tornado, I think the only team that can beat Caldwell County in the district will be Caldwell County.
Yeah. Well, you keep asking who made the schedule, and that's what I've been asking all year. Is you look at it, and it starts with Christian County, a big school.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
You got Crittenden County, that was a ranked team. Graves County is a big school. Henderson County was a ranked 6A team coming in. Hopkinsville was riding high when they played Caldwell County. So it's been a killer March, but maybe a good thing to get ready for this game.
There are two schools of thought. One is play very tough before the district, and then you're prepared because there's nothing that's going to pop up during district play. You have the other school of thought is let me see where I've got, figure out my team, and maybe play a lesser opponent, an opponent that's not quite as successful till I can figure out my team. But Caldwell County certainly they're not afraid to suit up and play anybody.
Well, from a fan standpoint, I think it's more exciting.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's good football.
We think back a few years ago to where Caldwell County was winning a lot of games by lopsided scores, and yes, that's fun for a while, but some of the excitement's kind of missing when you know you're going to show up and just watch the first half.
The radio
too. When it's 49 or 56 to nothing at halftime, you kind of lose a little of the drama from it. And I think this season, pretty much each week you've had that build up and some drama at each football game.
That's a really good point, and you've got to remember the age of these players, and for being so young, the high school kids, they've handled it very well.
Oh yeah, another big game, Tigers at Tillman, and speaking of football, a former Tiger, Jalen Boyd, is doing really well up at Lindsey Wilson. Had 96 yards, I believe, last week, and an 86-yard touchdown run.
That's a good day.
He caught a touchdown pass, so He's not their feature back yet, but he's just a junior. I think maybe he's headed that way in the near future.
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
Lindsey Wilson with a 69-14 win over Pikeville Saturday night in Columbia. So Lindsey's ranked 4th in NAIA, so they're pretty good. And they've added a game with Presbyterian for next Thursday. This Saturday's game got canceled because of the Hurricane Florence situation. And Presbyterian also lost a game. So those schools got together. Presbyterian, I think, is an FCS school.
PC is in Newberry, South Carolina, I believe. Or no, it's Clinton, South Carolina. I'm sorry. But, I think so. That South Carolina team, that would make sense. I know
it is Clinton, South Carolina.
The game, or if you're from there, it's Clinton.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But we would say Clinton. Of course, South Carolina Gamecocks didn't play. They called their game off in Columbia because of the weather. So Florence is kind of wreaked havoc with some schedules. But I'm glad that the Blue Hose can get a team scheduled on their agenda for this season.
Yeah, the Blue Raiders going on the road for that game. I think it's the first time they've ever played an NCAA team. So,
oh wow!
So that'll be interesting for an NAIA team. And again, Lindsey 3-0, ranked number 4 in the nation in NAIA. And Jalen Boyd, who was just an outstanding player at Caldwell County on some of those teams that put up 70 points a game, seemed like.
Yeah.
Good to see him doing well up at Lindsey Wilson. And saw D. Kane several times on the Western Kentucky game up at Louisville, and I thought the Hilltoppers were going to pull that thing out and just got beat at the very end.
They're killing me. Hilltoppers are killing me.
But D, what a player. Another one of those former outstanding Caldwell County players that playing on TV, and D got in there on special teams and quite a bit at linebacker the other night. So, and Western just so close to pulling out that game.
I so wish Western had a better engineering program and Mr. Sindelar would have gone to Bowling Green. I would have loved that. But, it is what it is.
The Hilltoppers this week are at Ball State. That's a 2 o'clock game Saturday, and you can see it online on ESPN3. The Kentucky Wildcats will play under the lights Saturday night. They'll host Mississippi State. That's a 6 o'clock Central Time game, and that's on ESPN2. And,
okay, Todd, is Florida struggling that much, or is UK that much improved?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Florida is definitely
you
down.
You sound like a politician. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah. I know Mississippi State's they're pretty tough. That's going to be a tougher opponent.
Kentucky actually outplayed Florida last year and just didn't win the game.
Well, you're right. Yeah, 1 point.
Yeah, and didn't cover a receiver a couple of times, and that led to 2 Florida touchdowns and what was otherwise pretty much a Kentucky win, should have been. I thought Kentucky played really well in the Swamp, and you can say, well, Florida's down. But you still just don't go into the Swamp.
It's a swamp,
and get a win.
No, you earn any wins you get the Swamp.
And I've got to be honest, I'm going to buy the UK hype. I am a UK fan, so that's probably not a big surprise to everybody. But but I'm buying the hype this year, and I'm going to take Kentucky to beat Mississippi State this year.
Anytime the East can put it on the West in the SEC, I'm aboard. I'm aboard.
And I'm a little surprised. I looked at the other picks in the Times later this week, and I was the only one that went with UK. And, you're looking at UK grad and UK fan, and I'm the one that picked Kentucky. Everybody else went Mississippi State.
I'm having a senior moment, but name the outstanding running back for the Cats, because as long as he stays healthy,
Benny Snell Jr.
As long as Benny Snell's running the rock, anything's possible. When you can run in the SEC and establish the run, you're in good shape.
And Kentucky looked really good up front. They had 300 yards rushing against Florida. It wasn't like it was a fluke kind of win. Mm-hmm. Kentucky actually dominated up front.
Yeah, and that's a good sign for UK football fans.
I mean, you look at Kentucky's games this year, they've actually statistically dominated more than the scores look like.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Florida game, they had to kind of pull that out at the end and had the play at the end of the game that kind of stretched the final margin out. But Kentucky really kind of dictated the pace of that game, which is weird to say in football. I mean, we expect it in basketball. I
love it.
Kentucky could play the Boston Celtics in basketball, and we'd be expecting the Cats to win.
It'd be disappointed if they lost by 2. Yeah.
But in football, you don't really expect Kentucky to be the team that is the more physical team and the team that dictates play at the line of scrimmage. But I think they've been that team this year.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm all in.
All right.
We'll see Saturday when Mississippi State comes calling.
If the Cats get it done against the Bulldogs, that'll be a good way to have a Saturday, to start a Saturday and end it. Well, end it Saturday, because I think airtime on WUKDZ is 4 o'clock, so it's a later game. So that means the TV gurus like it. They think it's going to be a good one.
Well, it's on ESPN2, so that's a little bit better than the SEC network. So they're kind of moving up a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Next week's game against South Carolina is also under the lights up at Kroger Field, which still seems weird to say Kroger Field, but are we contractually obligated to say that, or can we just call that Commonwealth Stadium?
So. I saw how much money they paid. I think, anytime we say Kroger Field, they paid for it, that's for sure.
Well, I've always said for $1 million a year, I'll change my name to Kroger Field.
So the offer's out there. If you're listening,
absolutely, for $1 million a year, I will be Kroger
leader.
Field.
Ask for Todd, and he'll hook you up. And I think you'll take payments, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Big schedule tonight: volleyball at home with Madisonville, boys soccer at home with Madisonville. Volleyball has added some games for Saturday at the Cab. Caldwell County will play Crittenden County at 9 a.m. Then Hopkinsville is going to face Crittenden County around 10:30. Caldwell County will be back at it at 12 o'clock with Hopkinsville, so 3 teams out there. They're going to play each other. So some extra home games if you're a volleyball fan, a chance to get out Saturday morning and watch the volleyball team.
I love watching volleyball.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
It's great. It's a game of momentum and runs. It's a lot of fun.
It's always moving. It's a fast-paced game, and it's fun.
That's absolutely right. Well, Todd, I think this 8 o'clock is working for the Sideline Report.
Absolutely.
So you want to do it again?
We'll try it again next week.
All right. Anything else we need to add before we sign off? I learned a lot about movies today.
Good. Yeah, that's
and
the
Ant-Man.
point.
I'm going to remember that.
I love Ant-Man. It couldn't make my top 5, but, man, I love that movie. It's just another movie that, forget the comic thing or knowing all the Marvel Cinematic Universe information. If you just like a good movie, it's a good movie. It's a fun movie. Maybe it's not the greatest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, but it's really good and it's really fun.
I haven't seen it, and my son's after me to see Black Panther. He loved it. And being a radio guy, I have seen both Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the soundtrack. It's just worth it to go for the soundtrack.
It's absolutely great.
Sounds good. Well, we'll do it again 8 a.m. now on the Sideline Report, so I look forward to it, and maybe we'll be basking in the afterglow of a Caldwell County win against Tillman. I'll probably be looking ahead for the next opponent. But
and thanks to Ed Marlowe of the Paducah Sun for joining us this morning and spending a lot of time with us, because everybody's busy this time of year in sports, and he was with us for almost an hour, so really appreciate that.
I didn't realize he's a Cadiz boy, so I learned something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up the Sideline Report this morning. WPKY Princeton joined Todd Griffin with the Princeton Times Leader. He'll be back in next Thursday morning in the 8 o'clock hour.
Whether it's a new addition to your home, a family vacation, or just keeping up with the bills, let ABC